Hello, I'm Emma Desi, and welcome to another episode of Turning Readers into Writers. If you're brand new here, welcome, and here's what you need to know. This is a community that believes you are never too old to write your first novel. No matter what you've been up to until now, if you're ready to write your book, I'm ready to help you reach the end. I focus on helping you find the time and confidence to begin your writing journey, as well as the craft and skills you need to finish the book. Each week I interview debut authors, editors and industry experts to keep you motivated, inspired and educated on all things writing, editing and publishing. If you want to catch up, head on over to emmadesi.com where you'll find a wealth of information and tools to help you get started. Before we dive in, this week's episode is brought to you by my free cheat sheet, 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write. In this guide, I give you 30 ways that you can find time to write in the small gaps that appear between the various errands and tasks and responsibilities that you have in your day-to-day life. Now, you might be thinking that you don't have any time to spare, but I can guarantee these top tips will give you writing time you didn't think you had. If you thought writing always involved a pen and paper or a keyboard, think again. If you thought you needed at least an hour at a time to write your manuscript, I help you reframe that. You won't be disappointed. Get your free copy of 30 Top Tips to Find Time to Write by going to emmadesi.com/30 Top Tips. Okay, let's dive in to today's episode. Dr. Rachel Grosvenor is an author, writing coach and editor from Birmingham in the UK, but she's currently living in New Zealand. She helps authors to write their novels and create a routine that takes them from procrastination to print. In our chat today, we find out what took Dr. Rachel Grosvenor to New Zealand, and it's not quite what you might think. And we discuss her own fiction, her poetry, her short stories, and the road that she took to writing and publication. And then we move on to productivity tips, because this is something she is highly versed in. She gets a lot done in her working week, and she shares how she does that. And then she also lets us in to something she has upcoming in the new year that can also help you up-level your productivity so that you can make sure that you have the time to write your novel. So let's delve in with Dr. Rachel Grosvenor and find out more about her. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. It's lovely to have you on the show, all the way over on the other side of the world.
Thanks very much for having me.
A pleasure. So I always like to start by asking my guests, tell us about your journey to writing and to editing and coaching.
Yeah, well, my journey to writing started when I was a child. So I read Lord of the Rings when I was ill in bed as a kid, and I was in bed for like 3 weeks, and I called up my mom and I was like, I've just read the first one of Lord of the Rings and you're going to need to get me the second one from the library because I can't believe it. And it was the first time that I was truly like immersed in this world, and I just couldn't believe how good it was. And I was brought up the road from Sarehole Mill, which is where Tolkien developed the idea for the Shire and things like that. And it's a big reason why I'm talking to you from New Zealand now. So right. I started off writing Lord of the Rings fan fiction when I was a kid. That's how I began my writing journey, and I was like obsessed with it. When it came to like time to go to university, I was like, okay, so the only thing I really want to do is be a writer. So I looked at courses in creative writing, and I went to Bath Spa University to do that. And then when I finished that, I didn't want to stop. So I did my MA in creative writing, and then after that I still didn't want to stop. So I did my PhD in creative writing, and that's really how I came to be where I am now. I've just always wanted to write, so I've kept doing it.
Wow. Yeah, you were actually a bit of a rare beast, I think, in that, because so many people I speak to as a child had this idea that they might want to write, but then life takes over and they go off and they do, like myself actually, go off and do all sorts of other things that have nothing to do with writing, and then later in life kind of come back to it. We've taken what I like to call the scenic route.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful to hear then that this was it. You knew right from day one this was going to be your passion, your raison d'etre, so to speak. A bit like Elizabeth Gilbert. That was the same for her, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a very supportive mother who was like, if you want to be a writer, go do creative writing. Absolutely wonderful. She was never like, oh, what are the job prospects? She was always like, let's do something you're passionate about. So
oh, good.
it's good.
And that can make all the difference, can't it, to have somebody to say, yes, follow your passion, rather than, why don't you get a degree first and do that as a backup plan? Or,
exactly.
Yeah. So I cannot let it pass, though, that Lord of the Rings is what took you to New Zealand.
Yes.
So is that true? Is that literally what you thought? That's it, I'm going.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously Peter Jackson's version of Lord of the Rings, because Tolkien's was very much more like England. But I, loved the films as a teenager, and I really wanted to come to the Shire. They have Hobbiton here, the set where you can visit and you can sit in the Green Dragon and have a pint of ale. And I really was like, this is what I want to do. So yeah, that was big part of the reason I came to New Zealand. And I've had some wonderful times at Hobbiton since. Hobbit Appreciation Day, dressing up as an elf and going there. And, I've met so many people here who feel the same, which is wonderful. It's really cool.
It's normalizing it. That's great.
Yeah.
But New Zealand's an amazing place. We had a fabulous 3 weeks there once. And I did work with a lady who she went for a holiday. She came back to London and immediately handed in her notice and said, no, I'm moving, that I've fallen in love, and off she went. And
yeah,
happily ever after, as far as I know. It is an amazing place.
It is. It's beautiful here. And the people are so friendly that it just feels very welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned there that you've done your BA, your MA, and then your PhD. So I don't know if you're able to kind of divide them in any way, but I wondered, what did you feel that you got from each of those? What did the BA teach you that made you think, no, I want to go on and do the MA and then on to the PhD?
I think when I was doing my BA, I was very young, and I was still learning how to study, really. It was the first time I'd been at university. And so really what I learned from that was how to kind of create a project and write to a specification. And something that spurred me on to do my MA, because I took a year out, was that I realized when I finished my BA that I didn't take full advantage of the opportunities that I'd had. And I realized that actually I wasn't knocking down lecturers' doors to ask them what they thought about things. And I realized that not everybody wanted to talk to me about writing, and that it wasn't something that other people were necessarily passionate about. And I really missed it because of that. And I thought, you had 3 years with all these people who wanted to talk to you about this subject, and you didn't take full advantage of that. Like, you should have jumped in more. Mm-hmm. That was a huge push to apply for an MA, because I really wanted to get back to those people who I could talk to. And I was a totally different student for my MA. I was staying late. I was, knocking on lecturers' doors and being like, oh, so you mentioned this, let's talk more about that. And then at the end of that year, I was really lucky that my supervisor said, I think you should do a PhD in this. Like, what do you think? And I was like, I think that sounds amazing. So yeah, I was really excited to do that. And by the time I did my PhD, I fully understood, self-led learning and how to, basically how to write and how to give peer review. And that was really one of the most amazing lessons, was learning how to give feedback and peer review and editing and things like that. When you're doing your BA, you're in your first year and people are saying, what do you think of this writing? It's really hard to answer. And it's really hard to give that feedback, because people don't necessarily teach that. How do you give feedback? And that's actually, when I was lecturing and teaching adults myself, the first class was always on that. This is how we talk to each other. This is how we give feedback to each other, because that's really important. It's really important to make sure that people leave feeling positive, but also like they've got something to work on.
I might circle back to that later when we talk about
Yeah.
coaching and stuff. I think that's invaluable. But I want to stick with your writing for now, because I know you write across many forms. You do long form, short stories, novels, and across different genres. So is there any one that you particularly like, that you're more drawn to than the others, or how do you decide what you're going to write when?
It's a good question. My first novel was literary fiction, and I read a lot of literary fiction and fantasy. Those are the genres that I am drawn to in a bookshop. And it was a heavy novel, and by the time I finished it 4 years later, I was kind of exhausted by it, and I really thought, you know what, I just want to take a break with something fun. And I started writing this fantasy, and I was reading like Terry Pratchett and things like that. And I started writing this book and I thought, this is really fun. Like, I'm having a really good time with this. So after I finished that novel, I moved on to what I'm writing at the moment, which are 2 companion novels. One of them is currently being edited, and then the other one is currently being written. It's a genre that I loosely refer to as Wild West fantasy.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the fantasy element is a little bit more witchcrafty than, say, fantastical.
Right.
But that's what I'm really enjoying at the moment. I spend a lot of time at the stables. I've ridden horses my whole life, and I'm using a lot of that in there. And also the landscape here really inspires me. Sprawling landscapes and mountains and things like that. So yeah, but one thing that is always the case in my novels is there's always a strong female main character. Always.
And so where do you get those ideas from? Given does it start with the protagonist, and then do you just kind of feel your way into what type of story it's going to be, or do you have an idea ahead of time of, okay, I've written something fun, now I want to be a bit more serious, or does the muse come to you, in fact?
It does depend. On my second novel, I had this idea of it's about 100-year-old woman who's retired from a university, and she basically takes down a totalitarian government. And
I love it.
She just came to me, this like badass elderly woman who wasn't going to take no for an answer. She wasn't done. And I will say characters come to me first. I'll just be sitting and then I'll think of someone and be like, I like you, and I'm going to see where you go. But I am a plotter.
Okay.
So once I've got my character, I really sit down and think, okay, what is going to happen in this story? I really like using the 3-act method. That really helps me. But I love to plot, because I didn't plot my first novel and it was incredibly stressful for me. And I'm not the kind of person who can just, see what happens. I have to plot it. But even if ideas come to me, I can add them into the plot. It's not that I'm really rigid. I just need to sit down and work it out ahead of time.
So, okay. And so will you have a kind of loose overarching knowledge of what's going to happen in the story, or do you like to delve down deeper and have more, almost a sort of chapter by chapter knowledge of what's going to happen?
Yeah, I have a chapter by chapter knowledge. Something that I found at university was that I felt like once I'd got an essay plan, essays were essentially written. And that's how I feel about novels. So once you've got a chapter plan, it's like, well, that's done. The novel's written. All I've got to do is fill in those gaps. And that really helps me. So that's what I do with that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's always interesting how different people work. From, I think it was PD James I read about, who should start off with a plot and then fill in the plot, and the outline got so detailed that it became the novel, and it was just kind of joining everything up as she went along. And then other people who just have an idea and fly with it, and then have all the work to do at the back end. But yeah, everyone's so slightly different. So I want to change tack just a little bit, because one of the questions I get asked a lot, and one of the things that my audience talk to me a lot about, is finding the time to write. We're all so busy now. I always think that since the advent of email, life has just sped up beyond belief.
Yeah.
There's no time, breathing room anymore. So they're always looking for suggestions, ideas, how to balance that time between family, work, having a social life, and fitting in the writing. And so I wondered, how does that work for you? How do you balance your professional life, your writing, and your private life?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because they don't teach you at university how to balance time. And that was something I struggled with. When I was doing my PhD, it was full time, and I was also working 2 jobs. And I had a job in the daytime at the university, and I was teaching creative writing to adults in the evening. And it was a lot. And I wanted to spend time with my partner, and I wanted to, see my mom and all that stuff. So I had to teach myself. And what I learned was methods that work for me are time blocking and task batching. And those are productivity methods that I find really powerful. So time blocking and task batching is essentially the act of looking at your calendar and pulling together tasks and focusing purely on that one task. So sometimes I think of my attention like a hose. There's water coming out, and I need to focus that water in one place only. Mm-hmm. So my whole calendar is blocked out from, and it might look kind of bizarre to some people. It's got sleeping time in it. It's got, breakfast time in it, and it's got reading time in it. It's got work time, and it means that I never have to say to myself, okay, what am I doing next? Because it's actually planned out for me. I know exactly what to focus on at that time. And I know that if I've got an hour of writing time and an email pops up, it's not time to look at emails right now. There is a time to look at emails, but that's later on. That's already planned out. So I don't have to change that direction of water essentially from that hose. I can just keep it focused. Time blocking and task batching has changed my life. And that's no exaggeration to say that. It literally enabled me to complete my studies while working and seeing people that I loved. Mm-hmm. And that's what I still do today. Mm-hmm. And I will say that this year especially has been the biggest year of personal growth for me, because I have added into that new planning methods like reverse engineering my goals and making sure that I have goals for the year and that everything is linked into those set goals. Mm-hmm. I literally have 4 goals for the year. I go through my calendar. Everything is highlighted to match that final goal. And if I can't highlight something, then why am I doing it? It doesn't need to be done.
Okay.
Things like that are very powerful. Yeah.
Oh, great. So that's wonderful. I think that will speak to a lot of people who are just looking for that way to be more productive. But the idea of blocking everything out and taking away, because once you've done that, then you're taking away a lot of that decision fatigue and that, what should I do now? Franticness that there is. Now you know what you're doing and you can move on and do it. And can I ask, do you, because being as busy as you are, do you still manage to write every day or several times a week? Is that still something that you plan for?
Yes, I block out time to write 3 times a week. I'm not one of these people who writes every day. And I say to people that I work with, you don't have to write every day. It doesn't work for everybody. And you know what? It just doesn't work for me. And that's okay. And it can be stressful sometimes. Stephen King's book on writing is like, write every day, including Christmas Day, including this, including that. I just cannot do that. That is not how I work. And that's fine. So, and this is what I say to people, routines have to fit with you. You can try another writer's routine, but it probably won't work for you. So it's all right to say you can write every day, and that is awesome. I used to work with someone who wrote 1,000 words a day. I mean, fantastic. But for me, nah. So I write about 4,000 to 6,000 words a week.
And that's phenomenal, though, isn't it? Because then that's how you write a novel. It's just about being regular or being consistent with it. It doesn't have to be all day, every day.
Exactly. It's just like climbing a mountain, you just got to put one foot in front of the other. And sometimes, I'll sit down and I'll be like, now I'm going to write 3,000 words, but actually what comes out is 1,000 words, but that's all right. That's okay. I know where I'm going with it, and that's fine.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about the creative tap and whether that also, how that helps you and how that helps the students that you work with.
Yes. So the creative tap is all about learning how to turn on creativity, basically. It's about not waiting for inspiration. I think when you start to write, a lot of people think that writers, wait for inspiration to hit. But actually, the act of writing means that if you wait for inspiration, you're probably not going to get much done. I don't find inspiration knocks on your door that much. You sort of have to force it. So the creative tap is essentially the act of practicing how to be creative on demand. So what I say to people is, what you want to do is you want to, first of all, work out, when am I at my most creative? So for me, it's the morning. I get most done in the morning. Some people write in bed at night and they find that really works for them. Everybody's different. But once you know that time period that you're at your most creative, if you practice being creative during that time, it's going to be much easier for you to sit down and write. And I say to people, if you sit down and actually the words don't come, try something else. Try free writing, try a writing exercise. And even if that's not working, get out a paintbrush, do anything creative for that set amount of time, and you will find that the creative tap is much easier to turn on. So it's basically a way of teaching creativity.
Yeah, training your brain, it sounds like, to just know. I'm just trying to think of an example, like you brush your teeth or whatever. It's just an automatic thing that you do. You know that when you go to the bathroom at night, that's what you're going to do. Trying to think of a bit more of a better example, but we do get used to things and things become second nature. And so when you know that this is when you're sitting down to write, it's not a big deal anymore. This is just, okay, this is my writing time. Let's switch that bit of the brain on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like your suggestion there of, even if the muse isn't coming at that moment in time when you sit down, but just to stick with it, to try some different exercises, to get a paintbrush out, and just try and do something that will start engaging that side of your brain. Really good suggestion.
Thanks.
So yes, I've mentioned before that you're not only an author, but you are a book coach and you're an editor. And I thought it might be useful to just differentiate those two different roles and the part that they play in shaping and producing a book, basically. So can we start with the book coach? What does a book coach do?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a coach, I basically work with authors on whatever their issues are, essentially. So I find that authors come to me at various stages. My most recent author came to me because she was on, the 5th draft of her novel, and she really wanted to get that finished now. And she was saying, I just need to have some kind of a plan to move forward. How can I do this? So that's what we worked on. And I get different authors, some people come to me and say, I have an idea, but I don't know how to turn this into a novel, actually. And then we'll work on how to do that together. So it's everything from, okay, I can't find the time to write, to I'm not really sure what the next step is. I've got a wonderful client in Australia who had never pitched to an agent before, but she had a meeting. So we had a big coaching session on, okay, this is how you pitch your novel. Let's break it down. And we rewrote her synopsis into like a pithy, short 5-minute talk. And she ended up getting a full manuscript to press, which is really great. So it's essentially whatever your writing issue is, I help people to move forward and find a solution to that. And coaching is really about the client, it's about what is going on with them. So although I have experience in writing and a background in coaching and things like that, it's not necessarily about my experiences. It's all about how I can help them move forward with what they want to do and investigating deeply into what they believe will help them as well.
Yeah. So the coaching side, as you say, is very much about the person, about the author and what they're going through. But the editing side then presumably it's more about the work itself.
Yes, absolutely. So I do developmental editing, copy editing. I will say developmental editing is my favorite because I just really enjoy going through a novel, and then I write an editorial report. which, is anything from 12,000 to, 25,000 words. And it's essentially, it's an in-depth essay on their work, and it looks at everything to do with narrative, characterization, dialogue, consistency. I go through everything and then send it back to them. And then we have a coaching session afterwards once they've read it. And we just discuss, what they think of my comments, whether they've got any questions, and how we can move forward. So, yeah. And copy editing is basically all the other stuff. It's grammar, it's, where's that comma? Is it in the right place? All things like that.
Oh, you must have a good brain for detail. I don't think I can do that. And so I'd love to know, because you before we started recording, we both mentioned that we work with coaches too. And so I wondered, what are some of the things, just from your own experience, that you found beneficial from working with a coach?
Yeah, I think it's so powerful to work with a coach. And I think not a lot of people realize what coaching is. It feels like it's a fairly new idea, so people are maybe a bit confused about it, but coaching is very much about working toward the future. So it's not so much about the past and what's happened, it's how can you move forward. And in my personal life, working with coaches has just really helped me. First of all, in my business, I've got a business coach, and she is amazing. And she's really helped me work out just how to move forward and what to do next. Because when I started my business, I really had no idea. I'd been editing and working and coaching under the guise of another company for a while, but I didn't know how to do this alone, and I didn't know anything about marketing really or anything about that. So she really helped me figure out a path forward. And also, there's something amazing to be said for someone giving you that time to speak. It's a rare thing that you sit with someone and you have that space. They hold space for you to say anything you like. And that's really magical, and it can lead to some incredible realizations.
Yeah, it's those intangible things, I think, is where coaching comes in, that it's not the planning and the strategy and the words or anything, but it's the kind of the relationship between you and your coach, and what comes out of the conversations together, and those wonderful kind of aha moments that you have, either about yourself and your own attitude to your writing, to your work, to your family, or about how you want to move forward and the kind of future that you want for yourself. So I totally agree. I think it's a bit hard to kind of quantify it, because it's the moments that you least expect it that the magic happens. But it's so worth doing.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned briefly that you're editing a book right now, but you're also writing a book right now. But I know that you've been working on something else for your audience as well, starting in the new year. So could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so basically I wanted to offer my audience and clients a way to plan their writing year, because I know that when you are heading into a new year, it can be a bit overwhelming. And you look at your plans and you're like, how am I going to do this? Is this actually going to happen? And then you set New Year's resolutions and you're like, I'm going to write a novel, but then you kind of forget and you're not sure really what that means. So I developed this, it's called the Ultimate Writer's Planning Workbook. And is exactly what it is. It's 60 plus pages of, okay, what are your goals? This is how we reverse engineer them. This is how we fit them into your schedule. This is how you time block. This is how you task batch. This is how your year is going to look. And that's going to be available from the 1st to the 15th of January. And it's essentially just going to be, okay, going from, I want to do this. This is actually how I do it. Now I've got a written plan. And I find that having a written plan and having everything planned out really limits overwhelm and limits those feelings of stress, because actually you can just sit down and say, it's all right. I know what this looks like and I know how this is going to work. And it's really great to end the year. If you could end 2022 having written that novel, what an awesome feeling that would be.
Yes, it would be. I love that. And so I love that you're giving people a roadmap to share your techniques in the way that you are so productive, and give them those steps on how they can work it out for themselves, and that idea of reverse engineering, which I think is quite new to a lot of people. Yeah, it was certainly new to me when I heard about it.
Okay, yeah, lovely.
So tell us, where can listeners find out more about you, and not only your coaching but your fiction as well?
So I am mostly active on Instagram. It's Rachel Grosvenor author, and also my website as well, which is the same title, Rachel Grosvenor author. Grosvenor has a silent S in the middle, which might trip a few people up, but yeah. So that's I do blog posts every Thursday, and they're about productivity, craft, coaching, and publishing. There's like a wealth of information there. I offer 2 PDF booklets on writing as well, just if you sign up to the subscription service. And I send out newsletters and things like that. So I like to give a lot of information. I spend a lot of time kind of serving. So, that's my why, essentially. I want other people to just be able to write, because I think that we can all write. If we've got that dream, we can all sit down and do it. It's just about finding a way to do that.
Wonderful. Rachel, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us, and I'll make sure I link to all of those places in the show notes.
Lovely.
Well, it's been wonderful learning more about you, your writing, the work that you do. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been lovely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found that helpful and inspirational. Now, don't forget to come on over to Facebook and join my group, Turning Readers into Writers. It is especially for you if you are a beginner writer who is looking to write their first novel. If you join the group, you will also find a free cheat sheet there called 3 Secret Hacks to Write with Consistency. So go to emmadesi.com/turning readers into writers, hit join. Can't wait to see you in there. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.